Okay, I want to start off by giving all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashim, Rakah, Kwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who teacheth the Bible in 100% truth. And Shalom to the hopeful elect of the 12 tribes of Israel, especially the 144,000, who consist of the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans in the land of the Americas, as well as the speckled bird, the Israelite foreigners living amongst the other nations. Shalom to you. Okay, I was just been looking around. I wanted to make a video, so I was just looking around the last couple of hours. Just been looking online at a couple of different things, and the main topic of conversation, mainly for people that are new to this. If you over the years you come across people that try to break down the Bible, or go through the scriptures, they preach to you in a godly manner. Eventually you find out that these people are all false prophets. You find the true prophets of the Most High, which you're only going to find within the Hebrew Israelites, within that community. And then even within that community, you're only going to find a small number of true prophets. So you come across these type of people that I'm explaining. They're explaining the Bible to you properly. They're showing you, what's written, what it means. They're piecing it all together, and they're showing you according to the information that's out there. We go into history as well as prophecy, and the point is, the main thing you want to concentrate on is prophecy. That's where there's a time for love. There's a time for killing. There's a time for love. So you've obviously got to work out what's what. Even Yahweh Shai spoke of knowing the season, recognizing the season and what time that is, is going to be falling upon this earth, and then knowing when to take heed of this warning, as spoken of by Ezekiel. The Most High told Ezekiel, and it doesn't just go for Ezekiel, it goes for all of the prophets. The spirit of a prophet is subject unto the prophet. So through reincarnation, prophets are reborn, but they come back with that same job of speaking prophecy. And this happens at the end of empires, the end of kingdoms. When you look back through history, you'll find that, for example, Daniel is a prophet of the Most High, spoken of in the, written about in the Bible. And he told kingdoms when their time was up, and obviously he laid out through prophecy, through dream, through vision, he laid out future kingdoms that were to rule the earth. So where we are today, 2025, it's about a week left in 2025. Then we're switching over into 2026. The main subject is that you really want to be looking into is prophecy, because that is the future, and the future is about to change drastically. Biblical events, are going to happen. Everything that happens that takes part is through the Most High's will, so it's all biblical if you want to put it that way. But that particular phrase, biblical events, you're going to see a lot of those very soon, in rapid succession. 2026, I spoke of in 2023. I've mentioned this a few times. In January 2023, you had I made a video, and looking at the situation with the small hats, the state of Israel, and Iran at that time in January 2023. I was going through a particular article, and the article said that the small hats released a statement to say that they expect Iran to have nuclear weapons built and ready to use by 2026. So I kind of said, well, look, so by 2026 we have this whole situation, Armageddon, World War III. Even obviously you've got we've got prophecy of war, but you've also got prophecy of the mark of the beast. what we call the MOTB. That's what I was saying at that time. Expect these things to move along quite quickly between now, which was 2023, and 2026. And then 10 months after that, in October 2023, you had the situation in Gaza. So that situation, is prophecy. That's Jeremiah chapter 49. That's what the Most High has spoken of, how he's going to start World War III, the least of the flock, those small hats drawing out other nations into the Third World War. And so that particular war has gone on for 2 years. It's not really a war because it's one-sided, but that situation has gone on for 2 years. That's opening the eyes of people of the world to. Over the last 2 years, you look around, people are very clued up now. They realize who's running the media, who's running these, corporate organizations, who's running the banks, who's stopping peace in the Middle East, who's creating all that situation down there. They've all started to put it down to one particular group of people. So we're heading into 2026, and now there's reports coming out recently in the last few days of Iran. The small hats starting to say that they need to do something about Iran. So that 3 years has skipped by nicely, and here we are, and we're on the edge of the collapse of this particular civilization. So prophecy is a major thing. If you're new, you need to stay in tune with it. You've got a orchestrated financial collapse in order to bring about a new system, and that new system will be a digital system. While that's happening, things are in society, there's less funding going out into particular things, so your society is lacking in protection from government forces, from whatever else. So you've got all these types of problems. Immigration is a problem, so you've got that. That creates a racial war, racial tension. And then you've got the overhanging problem of World War III. So these are all the events that are going to bring this end time trouble called Jacob's trouble, and this judgment upon the whole earth. So if you're new, you need to really just stay locked into prophecy. And you're only going to get that, you're only going to get true prophecy from people calling on the name of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, which is what we do, the true prophets. So one of those things that I mentioned there, you've got a change in the financial system. You've got a economic collapse which is due. At the minute we're witnessing inflation, and soon enough that will turn to hyperinflation. And in the meantime, people, there's not enough jobs out there. There's problems with the general economy. People aren't spending, so organizations are making cutbacks. People are losing jobs, and they're closing down banks. They're pushing more of their services online. This is all for a reason. They're letting people get away with crime, and again, this is all orchestrated. We've gone into this many times. I'm just explaining this for people that are new. So this whole of it's judgment from the Most High that's about to hit this earth. It's described in the Bible, but the Most High has a group of people who He has put in place. The wicked, the wicked are reserved for the day of judgment. So that day of trouble. So the Most High has a group of people known as the Edomites in charge of the earth today, and within that nation of people there is a very small group of people who are able to control the world and the time that we live in. And so they want to bring about a new world order, Agenda 2030, the MOTB. And the MOTB is a device. You go to Revelation chapter 13, you've got a device that goes under the skin. I might have it here actually. Yeah. Device that goes under the skin. Says he calls this is Revelation 13 and 16. When you go, this is for new people. When you go further up into the chapter, It starts off by describing the beast from the sea. It goes on to describe the beast from the earth. Now, these two beasts are basically controlling powers, upon earth. The controlling power. For example, today we live in a society where there's many different nations and they have their own armies and all have their own levels of power, but they have to come together under these organizations such as NATO and the EU. So together those two make the beast. That's the beast system that you have to live and operate within. Then you go to Revelation 17 and it tells you that there is a whore that rides that beast, and that is America, uses NATO and EU to push his weight around and force other nations to do business in their way to suit them for their benefit. That's pretty much a breakdown of the world that we live in. So it starts off when it describes the beast from the earth. You go back to the book of Daniel, you describe the statue. The last part was Rome. The legs, Rome had two parts. And it even says here in verse 2, whose deadly wound was healed. So that's referring to the ancient Roman Empire, and today what we live in, the revised Roman Empire. And verse 11 says, behold, another beast coming out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. That represents your democratic political system. Two horns like a lamb, so you've got two parties to choose from, two politicians, two votes, which, one vote, two to choose from. And the lamb makes it seem like something that can't do any harm to you. But it says he spake as a dragon, so that comes into the laws and the rules and regulations that they give you. And as we keep explaining, now we're going into this New World Order phase. You've had this whole situation with this word conspiracy theory. For years people could sort of laugh at you, rubbish off anything you claim with the phrase conspiracy theory. And in today's society, that would, rubbish off your claim. It'd be a laughing matter, and then people would move on. But since 2020, the world has been polarized, in terms of what you're going to do. In 2020, you had a choice to make. Are you going to take that thing, or did you not take that thing? And if you didn't take that thing, it's because you're probably awake to what they call conspiracy theories. You fast forward to today, and that same polarization is happening even more. You've got this problem with immigration. You've got people that want to fight against it. You've got some people that are saying, hey, no, this is not a natural occurrence of events. This is organized. This is controlled and made to happen like this. So you've got this polarization of opinions and so on and so forth. But yeah, so moving on. So with this particular empire that we live in today, it says Revelation 13 and 16, and it says, causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. It says, and that no man might buy or sell, save he had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that have understanding count the number of the beast. It is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Now, people will try to do many types of different calculations as to work out what this is. They'll start giving you salesman talk. They'll twist it. Sometimes people receive payments not to tell you what's actually written here, what to understand. Obviously, it's parabolic. There's no actual beast that is sitting on the earth ruling it today. But when you deal with EU and NATO, they are beasts, because you can't really get out of the system. Everywhere you go in this world, they're able to pinpoint you, through your payment system, through your telephone, and they want to transfer all that to a device that goes under the skin, so you literally become controllable, a controllable device. With that, you follow the rules. If you don't follow the rules, they turn off your device, and you're unable to buy or sell. You're unable to eat or drink. It says he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark, and that word mark. So the original word there would have been a Greek word when the text was first written, and that Greek word would say charagma. That charagma means incision. So it says you, to receive an incision in their right hand. And again, when you go back to this word in the Greek, it says dextros, which is your power hand. It says so to receive an incision in the power hand or in the foreheads, that no man might buy or sell. So, when you look at that, that boils down to one thing. Um, which is one of these. So, you name a device that you can put within an incision in your dominant hand and then use that to buy and sell. And this is the device, what they're speaking of, what's spoken of, what John spoke of. So, and if you look up in today, in Sweden, there's like thousands of people living with this device implanted in the hand. They'll use it for access, for keys, for doors, to start their car and to make payments. So this is something that you're not supposed to take. The Most High strictly forbids you to take that if you're an Israelite, mainly if you're of the elect. So that's the big thing. You see, with this, you have to have a change of monetary system. The people that rule society, pretty much the banking elites, they're not going to just rock up one day and say we're going to change the financial system, we're taking away cash, and we're going to bring a digital system. They're going to do it by deception. They say, well, the economy's crashed, we've got no choice, we have to think of something new. The new answer is already created. It already exists, and it will be a digital system. So while you're watching the news and you're wondering why they're arguing over this and how come things are so bad and why don't they fix this problem and inflation and the prices of things and so on and so forth, this is all orchestrated to bring that collapse, to bring in that new system. That collapse could very well be 2026, and the way things are going. And once that happens, like I was saying to people that are new, this is where you want to take heed of this warning, because shit's going to hit the fan, the world's going to be turned upside down, and how are you going to be able to survive? There's only going to be one way to survive, and that is to call on the name Yahweh B'Hashem Yahweh Shai. So where was it? I was looking it up earlier. So the 6 stages of collapse. When I was searching, some people, it starts off with the 6. Some people say the 7. Here you go, 7 stages of an empire, a cautionary pattern in history. That's a particular article there, but I'm just looking at the 6 stages here, which is written and given by AI Overview, and this takes into account multiple opinions. It says the 6 stages of collapse often refer to historical models of civilization or empire decline. Now, I've had this argument. People say, "Oh, well, we're not living in an empire." They think of the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, and they say, "Well, we're not living in an empire anymore." But when you define the word empire, then you have one particular group which is controlling the wider society, and that's what America do through the EU and NATO, through the beast system, as described in the book of Revelation. And lo and behold, so there's your empire, because you have to do things their way, and that's why so much of the world is Americanized, or you could change that phrase and say westernized, because a lot of Western culture is built around Americanization. Just like in ancient times, our people were Hellenized, with in under the Greek Empire. So with Greek fashion, speaking, all the customs, cultures, all the things of the culture, and that was what a lot of our people were into. So you same thing today. You look around, you look at our people, except for the new ruling power is now America. Through the beast system, it's if you like, if it's a secret empire, it's not on full display, bannered, with a big banner, say we are the controlling empire. And then you look at our people; they were influenced by this controlling power. But it says here the 6 stages of collapse often refer to historical models of civilization or empire decline. This is like Sir John Glubb's stages. This is conquest, commerce, affluence, intellect, decadence, and decline. This is or Ray Dalio's internal cycle: order, refinement, prosperity, excess, conflict, war. Focusing on shifts from strong order to disorder, marked by moral decay, debt, internal strife, and resource issues, leading to potential social breakdown or revolution. Says other models exist for financial or personal collapse, detailing a gradual decline. So they've broken it down into 3 parts, because I just put the 6 stages of collapse, and so you got at the bottom here you've got like a personal level. So personal financial collapse, a modern example. We don't really need that. This is a big cycle, Ray Dalio's big cycle, internal order disorder. So this is within like an organization or mainly like a country. New order, new government, resource allocation, peace and prosperity, excesses and debt, crises and conflict, war, revolution. This is which leads you back to stage 1, new order, new government. So that's like a country cycle. America influences a lot of these governments around the world, and they keep going through these cycles. They put people in to win power, win vote, become leaders of these particular nations, so they can influence them. And when they don't do what they say, they create wars, revolutions to dethrone these particular people, to cause a revolution in the country, uproar, and install new leaders. Meanwhile, messing with the people, ultimately it's messing with the lives of the people that live in these nations at the hands of a few. But Glubb was described here, historian Sir John Glubb, his stages of an empire civilization model. And we're talking to you about the end of the world, the end of an era, which is what we're living in, and it's run by we're ruled by an empire, which is the beast system and America. But historian Sir John Glubb described empires moving through cycles, often lasting about 10 generations, with these key phases leading to collapse. This is the age of pioneers, outburst. This is new cultures emerge, often through conquest. Age of conquest, military strength expands territory. Age of commerce, trade flourishes under military protection. Age of affluence, luxury, greed, and selfishness rise. Age of intellect, focuses shifts to intellectual pursuits. I won't read it all. Age of decadence, moral decline. Age of decline and collapse, final breakdown. So these are the 7 stages of a empire, civilization. And remember, this one that we're living in at the minute is going to be collapsed on purpose by these banking elites to bring a new system, and that new system is the MOTB, the device that goes under the skin. It allows you to buy and sell. So that will be the only way. It says he causes all, which means all other forms of payment will be removed and made void. So for example, if they have a financial crash, your money is worth nothing. Just before that crash, you'd have like hyperinflation. So, just to get a pint of milk, you'd need like, £200. And then, a pint of milk at the minute is just a few quid. It's probably about £2. But then it could be like 10 times worse, 50 times, 100 times worse. and then eventually the system will collapse. When it collapses, your cash is worth nothing. Then they'll say you have, if you want to buy and sell, you've got to use this new system. And so now, day one, you're in a spot of bother because you've now got to eat, but you have no money to buy with. All these people that are out there stacking their money at the minute. The worst time in history of humanity to be going out there and stacking P and worrying about how much money you got and making it work is now. This is the worst time in humanity to be thinking like that, because basically it's all going to get wiped off. First of all, the money's going to get wiped out, so your money's going to be worth nothing, and then the Most High is going to send His Son to make a war with this empire and to destroy it. Put it to pieces, hit the world with ICBMs and shake the earth, make the earth crack, make the lands move, make a new map. So worrying about your money is the stupidest thing you could be doing at the beginning of 2026. So you got these false prophets out there, taking money to pervert the truth, what they're speaking, and the Most High is going to severely punish them. You shouldn't take it lightly. But I ran through these quite quickly, so if I take my time through it. So we've been through these, we're pretty much done with these 7 stages of the empire. Stage 1, age of pioneers, outbursts, new cultures emerge, often through conquest. So, you live under the rule of so-called white people. That's what they call themselves since the late 1600s. The Bible refers to them as Edomites. When you read about these people in the scriptures, they've been given a certain amount of time to rule the earth. You then look into the history books and you'll find that the people ruling today had a period of their own, roughly 500 years ago, called Renaissance. And so the word Renaissance means rebirth. And so the people themselves that rule today, the people that, who made Google? And people, we pull up this information and you say, oh no, you made it say that. No, how did we make it say it? That's Google. We're showing you what's out there. So who put that together? The people that run society. So the people that run society, you type in Renaissance, they'll show you this is our Renaissance period. This is our rebirth. Renaissance art, Renaissance language, Renaissance everything, fashion. And then ever since then, you've had these people ruling. You also had a thing called iconoclasm at that time, where they defaced old religious artifacts as part of their Renaissance. So that was the age of pioneers. Apostle John spoke about, in the book of Revelation, spoke about the Satan being let loose for a little season. And that's the season that we're in. And that was his rebirth. So the Bible's telling you, 1,000 years, they were in the Caucasus under spiritual lock and key. The Most High has let them loose. They've had a rebirth 500 years ago. The history books back that up. They've gone around the world. They've taken over everything. Then you had stories like Christopher Columbus. So that moves you on to stage 2, age of conquests. Military strength expands territory. So, they sent people out like Columbus, and they make him out to be a hero. But what they do is they go there, they find out there's a people, and then they slaughter them, they take them over, they trick them, they lie to them, they do whatever they have to do. They'll address it in their history books as heroes, but that's because it's their empire, it's their age, it's their kingdom, it's not yours. So you move on to stage 3, age of commerce. Trade flourishes under military protection. So you start, well, you've had like, what was it, 3 or 4 industrial revolutions, and that is your age of commerce. So money starts getting made. People are, the world became a smaller place when planes were created. And now you can fly to different places. Now then, commerce, business, just out of people flying to different places. That weren't happening before. So you've had all that. You go to the Ezekiel, the book, the Ezekiel chapter 17, the book of Ezekiel talks about America being the land of traffic. The land of traffic. Traffic. The word traffic means commerce. So America was that place, the center of the world. Everybody wanted to go there. They had all these trade going on, and so on and so forth, and all the other nations around the world pretty much encouraged into that system. So you have the age of affluence, luxury, greed, selfishness, selfishness rise. This is eroding traditional virtues, and that's what we've had. You look, you can go back, say, far as the 60s, the 70s. The scriptures, Obadiah talks about the, the Most High says to the nation of Eden, once you reach the stars, I will bring you down. So the late 60s, they say they went to the moon. They started visiting space. They have a space station, and ever since these people have hit those heights, their empire is on a downward spiral. You can tell because you can see moral decay ever since then. You've got the influence of drugs in the 60s and 70s. In the 80s, it started becoming okay for women, in bikinis. You didn't really get that. Maybe a little bit in the 70s you had that, but in the 60s, 50s, 30s, you didn't have that. So you had that type of thing coming in. You had female liberation. Women were told you have freedom and power to go to work and do what the man does. And they were told that so that the powers that be can earn 2 tax incomes per household. Meanwhile, you've had moral decay in the family home, broken, not necessarily broken homes, but mum's at work and so's dad. So what's the kids doing whatever. So it goes back to where was we? Yeah, age of affluence, luxury, greed, and selfishness rise, eroding traditional value. So people are now going out earning stuff. You've got these women, they're going out earning stuff. Everybody's making money. Everybody, since that type of the world changed into that manner, things like greed and selfishness have risen. They're rising even up to this point today. You've got even to this point, people go out there just to make their money and so on and so forth, and eroding traditional virtues that started happening in, say, the 60s, 70s, and you look at today, 50 years later, a lot of those virtues have totally disappeared. The age of intellect, focus shifts to intellect pursuits, sometimes detached from practicality, and we live in that world today. Obviously, the Most High has given a certain amount of intellect and knowledge to these ruling elites to allow them to build their weaponry, to allow them to go to space. The book of Revelation chapter 13 speaks of the miracle of fire coming down from heaven in the sight of men. That's talking about fighter jets shooting rockets down to the earth. So that you've had this is the age of intellect. It says focus shifts to intellectual pursuits. So now we're in a time where people, that's like nothing to people. Having fighter jets in the air and planes and all this supersonic this and that and whatever is nothing to people. So now they talk a lot about, for example, you've got people like Elon Musk come out and talk about going into space and to Mars and to this. And sometimes you look at them and you think, can you even get to Mars? Like, you talk about going to Mars like you're just going to jump on the bus and go there. They talk about they're going to do this, that. They want to merge man with AI. So they're ultimately trying to take over the control of the Most High. And so, that goes back into that intellect. The focus shifts to intellectual pursuits, sometimes detached from practicality. And then the age of decadence. And obviously, when you go back to, stage 5, age of intellect, focuses shifts to intellectual pursuits, sometimes detached from practicality. You look at the book of Obadiah, talks about the pride of Edom deceiving them. They're very prideful people. So when they've created all these things, your planes and your this and that, and your fighter jets, you talk to them today, you say to them, well, you invaded these different countries around the earth. They say, well, we brought them civilization and all this new stuff. Um, and that's a level of pride. And so even with that, that's why they talk a whole load of nonsense. Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to go to space, we're going to do that, and then these people believe it. The normal people that believe all this stuff that they're coming out in the news and so on and so forth. And it all goes back to that pride. Stage 6, age of decadence, moral decline. We've definitely seen that. You're you try to bring up your children as best you can, but they could still get to the age of 18 and become an OnlyFans model, go and sell their body for sex. They could go and join a gang, start robbing people. So people are out there doing whatever they got to do. You got video, CCTV cameras everywhere now. So people are getting caught doing all sorts of stupid stuff. People working in care homes with old people, abusing them, doing stuff like that. So moral you live in a society where the moral decline is at its maximum, where morals are at their lowest point. A lack of discipline, yeah, we live in that type of society now, and weakening civic duty, and we've been witnessing that over the last few years. People talk about how the police don't turn up, there's not enough, certain things that the government are supposed to provide for a society, even down to like fixing the potholes in the roads. I know that sounds silly, and the potholes in the road doesn't mean your empire is going to collapse, but it's a sign. It's a sign that the civic duty is not being upheld. And then you have stage 7, the age of decline and collapse, final breakdown due to internal decay and external pressures. And that's where we are today. We're literally at that point. This is what we're sitting here. Those that have the spirit on them, the prophets of Yahweh, Bashim, Yahushai, we understand the future. And we're literally sitting here waiting for this empire to disappear. We know it's disappearing because we're given all these details in the scriptures to understand what we're witnessing. And the fact that we're here telling you means that this empire is about to collapse. We wouldn't be here telling you that it's going to collapse if it wasn't about to collapse, because that's what the Most High does. He sends his prophets just before he brings down the house. Go and let them know, give them warning from me. So the age of decline and collapse, we're final breakdown due to internal decay. And we're seeing that now. People are complaining about immigration. They say it doesn't matter who you vote for, they're all frauds. For example, in America, people went with the Biden. It weren't working. They've gone from Donald Trump 2016 to 2020 to Biden and back to Trump. So that shows you the flip-flopping of, this person fix it, now maybe they'll fix it. And people are pulling at different extremes. And personally, I think that these leaders are just picked. They're picked by the elites. They pick them, they give them to you, and they are creating the problems. They're creating all these problems that we have today. And it's, people say, well, why would they do that? They want to cause a final breakdown so that they can introduce this new system. So you're watching at the minute, politics is a joke. Any country you go to, politics is just a bunch of people on TV just shouting and arguing at each other. No one's really giving them credit anymore. People don't hold these people, in any high position or terms of respect like they used to. People are pretty much seeing so many things being promised and seeing them being broken that they've lost faith in it. You go back to the Albert Pike letter to Mazzini, and that's the plan of the 3 world wars. That's how they wanted to bring them in. So you're seeing that play out perfectly. And so that's why I say, even though it's the 7 stages of a collapse, and it's the same system you see many different empires. When you go back to Rome had similar things. They had an immigration problem. They had inflation problem. so on and so forth. So these things are repeated, but like I say, it's the Most High. You go back to the scriptures, the Most High tells you He chooses the kings. He decides when they rise and when they fall. He sends out the prophets to warn you just beforehand. But the difference this time is all these rulerships by these heathen nations around the earth has come to an end. And now you've come to a completely new point where you now have rulership. Very soon you're going to have rulership by the Most High Son, Yahweh Shai. And it's going to be a forever kingdom and a righteous kingdom ruled by Israelites. And the world's going to be in harmony. This is Second Ezra, Second Ezra's chapter 6. I don't know. I want to read all of it, but I don't think I'm going to be able to now. But I'll try and read. I mean, what I want is verse 9, but I'll start at 1. This is verse 1, 2nd Ezra's chapter 6. It says, "And he said unto me in the beginning," so this is the Most High speaking to Ezra's. It says, "In the beginning, when the earth was made," it says, "before the borders of the world stood, or ever the winds blew." It says, "Before it thundered and lightened," thunder and lightning, or ever the foundations of paradise were laid. It says, "Before the fair flowers were seen," it says, "or even the movable powers were established." It says, "Before the innumerable multitude of angels were gathered together." It says, "or ever the heights of the air were lifted up." It says, "Before the measure of the firmament were named." It says, "or ever the chimneys in Sion were hot." It says, "And ere the present years were sought out, and or ever the inventions of them that now sin were turned." It says, "Before they were sealed, that have gathered faith for a treasure." It says, "Then did I consider these things, and they all were made through me alone." This is the Most High speaking. This is, "and through none other." It says, "By me also they shall be ended, and by none other." So the Most High speaking of certain things, and he's saying, I was here before all that, before this, before the wind, before the flowers, before everything. And so, I decided when they're here, and I will decide when they're not here, pretty much. So then answered I, Ezra spoke, answered to the Most High. It says, "What shall be the parting asunder of the times?" It says, "or when shall the end of the first and the beginning of it that followeth?" So Ezra is asking, what shall be the parting asunder of the times? What times? The times between the Most High creating something and the Most High ending something. It says, and they all were made through me alone and through none other. It says, "By me also they shall be ended, and by none other." So Ezra is asking, what is the parting asunder of the times? How do you know when's what? He's asking about definition. It says, "Or when shall the end of the first and the beginning of it that followeth?" The end of all these rulership of all these heathen nations. End of all the sin and all the wickedness, all the corruption that happens all over the earth. And it says the beginning of it that followeth, the beginning of righteousness, a rulership of righteousness upon the earth, ruled by the Most High, where everybody knows the Most High, worships the Most High, and everything is in order. It says, "And he said unto me," so the Most High speaking back to Ezra, this is "from Abraham unto Isaac." It says, "When Jacob and Esau were born of him," it says, "Jacob had held first the heel of Esau." Obviously Jacob and Esau being twins that were fighting in the womb. And the Most High pretty much said that they will be the progenitors of two different nations. So for those that are new, Jacob being the progenitor of the Israelite nations, the 12 tribes, and Esau being the progenitor of the Edomite nation, or what they call themselves today, known as white people. Although sometimes you can't just take everybody's skin color for granted, because people have mixtures in their families. You have to follow the father's bloodline to trace back who's who. It says, but verse 9. So this is the point. So, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So Esau is the end of the world. Now the word world doesn't mean the planet or the universe. And the reason is because there's something that has to follow it. So the word world goes back to the word age. So you have different ages, or rulerships. So you had the age of the ancient Roman Empire. They did things that we wouldn't do today. We do things that they wouldn't do because we're living in a different age. Empires last for roughly 250 years. That's the average age of an empire. And in the last 500 years, you've had, you had Britannia pretty much did their thing for I think about 250 years, and then since then you've had America, 1776. So next year, 2026, is the 250-year mark. And Donald Trump's got these celebrations planned in America, but this is it's not a good sign. It's not a good look for these Edomites, because that actual mark of getting to 250 years. It says here, for Esau is the end of the world. It says, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So the world where the heathens have ruled, where we've had to go through these different captivities under these different rulerships, sin is all over the earth, corruption, wickedness. Even the fact that it's resulted in, it's got to the point where we've been scattered all over the earth, and we're not even in our own land. It says, for Esau is the end of the world. So when Esau's gone, that all that's ended, and that's who's in rulership today. The Esau's been around, obviously, for as long as Jacob. Various empires, ancient Roman Empire, they've had different rulerships here and there, but this one is the last. This is, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth, and that would be the kingdom of heaven, which is a kingdom on earth, rulership on earth, the Son of the Most High on earth, ruling the nations with a rod of iron, and the nation of Israel pretty much being serving as priests to the rest of the world, to teach them the laws of the Most High, how to live, how to obey the land, how to obey the Most High, how to, what food not to eat, what to eat, and dietary law, so on and so forth. It says, the hand of man is betwixt the hill and the hand. This other question, Esdras, asked thou not. So the hand of man is between the hill and the hand. And that's where we are today. You're right on that cusp. You're living at that moment where you're about to witness, the world is about to witness that changeover. But this changeover is going to be, more dramatic, as the scriptures tell you, a time like never been seen before. When other empires have come in and taken over, every time the Most High has given them the go-ahead, and they've been able to have the power to go over and take over the world, they've done it through war, violence, and sometimes surgical strikes. But this takedown is going to be more spectacular, something out of this world. We've seen things in movies, and they give you an idea. You can have what they call a UFO invasion, which is the angels, the chariots of Israel in the skies. You're going to have nuclear ICBMs, so your nuclear doomsday videos, movies, that all that type of effect comes into it. The whole world is going to rock, so you're going to have your earthquake, your tsunamis, the land cracking and breaking, a new map. You're going to have a breakdown in all your services at that point. So any communications, telephone lines, pipelines, water lines, gas lines, they're all going to be broken at those particular moments. Any power stations, they're all going to crumble when the world rocks to and forth. They're all going to break, every single one. And that's after the financial collapse, the collapse in society, the breakdown, the crime increasing, the inflation increasing, all these problems increasing, immigration increasing, to the point where, at some point, you go to chapter 15 and 16, 2nd Esdras, at some point people will take to the streets. This is all the end of this particular age, this particular empire, this era. And like I say, when you look at the, where is it, the 7 stages, we're pretty much on the last. You've had all this. You've had all this other stuff. The age of decadence, moral decline, lack of discipline, and weakening civic duty. That's been happening for the last 20 years. You talk to people in the UK, that's not my problem, that's not my problem. People don't have a duty. They feel like they don't have a duty anymore. But they want, they still complain when the system ain't right. They say, well, this ain't right. The government, so they blame everything on the government. The government should fix this, they should fix that. But yet people themselves have lack of discipline and moral decline within themselves. It's because they're a bit too used to comfortable life. We live in a world where, you think like 20, 30 years ago, you had to work for something like a Mercedes. To get a Mercedes was a special thing. 20, 30 years ago, you had to work hard. Everybody's got one now. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a difference between a Mercedes and a real Mercedes. You go to the dealership and you talk to someone, and they'll tell you, these aren't real Mercs. That's just what they sell. That's just like their supermarket items. And you've got people that come in, they buy these small engines with these basic features, but they just want that badge. But it goes back to that. That's just one example. People get anything they want to get. Money's easy. They go out and earn money, then they blow it, they spend it. It's all about having a good time. Women are out there just doing what they're doing. The family structure is broken. A lot of children today are on computer games. They're stuck in the house. They don't even get enough vitamin D for the sunlight, let alone anything else. And you wonder why they get to 21 years old and they have an imbalance in the brain. They're unable to function in society as a normal person. Moral decline, TV, watching all your music these female music stars on TV, they're all pretty much practically wearing nothing. Sex scenes are put on TV all the time. That never used to happen. This all leads to moral decline, lack of discipline. You've had all that. That's not even new to you. If I say all that stuff, you just shrug it off like, yeah, whatever, because that's been happening for decades. But at some point, it has to give in. The age of decline and collapse, the final breakdown. And now we're at the point where they're doing all these things, and it's propelling the financial collapse. What will start first, the financial collapse or the Battle of Armageddon in the Middle East? Well, I'm not too sure, but the Battle of Armageddon in the Middle East, or some sort of war, if that was to intensify and other nations started joining in the Middle East anytime soon, that would soon see the economic system collapse, because money would have to be printed, and then inflation. Money would be printed in order to produce weapons and pay. They're going to have to conscripts, recruit people, send them on the front line. We're going to have to pay them while they're sending them on the front line. So it's all money. Is it Japan are selling their debt, which is forcing America to print money at the minute? So all these little things that are happening in the news, they're actually affecting it. Those of you that can't see prophecy coming to pass, you don't actually understand the prophecy. And that's why you can't see it in the news. You have to understand it to be able to witness it. So I'm going to leave it there. I might come back in a few days. I'll be off on the weekend. I might come back and read the whole chapter. But we're at that time. Is it verse 9? For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. We're about to enter into that new world. It's 2026, and that could very well be the end of this age, this end of this empire, the end of this rulership, and the beginning of it that followeth, the rule of Israelites, obviously led by Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai. So I'm going to leave it right there. I hope that's edifying. Until next time, all praises to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Rakak Wadash. And until next time, Shalom.